Hello, everyone. Well, welcome to another episode of Come Together. And I'm here today with my co-host, Tom Gauker. Hello, Tom. And we have a very special guest with us, someone who actually lives in the town where I used to live in. Life is so fascinating that way. And that's Darren DeVivo. Is that correct?
Yeah, you got it. You said it.
Darren DeVivo. DeVivo. Okay.
DeVivo. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Darren, welcome to Come Together.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. Hello, Thomas.
Hello, hello.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here. And I'm quite familiar with WFUV, where you've been, shall we say, no pun intended, stationed for quite a while, for probably
Yes. Yeah.
decades.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been on the air there. But you can't say it's changed so much through the years, but from the very first time I was behind the mic doing a show, it's been 41 years.
Right.
Oh my God! Wow.
It's changed a lot. I mean, the WFUV of the 80s is light years different than the WFUV today, but it's very fortunate. And they say you got to have talent, but you got to have luck. And the stars aligned every time there was about some sort of change to happen, either to me or the station, and they always aligned together.
Mhm.
And, as Al Pacino says in Godfather 3, just when I thought I was done, they pulled me back in. And, it ended up being a lifetime there practically.
Yeah, well, good for
Right.
you, man. That's good news. That's good stuff. So, I know that you've interviewed some pretty heavy names, which I think are quite wonderful. But before we dive into that, I'm just kind of curious. When did you first, on your own, discover the Beatles, and what was the first song that you discovered the Beatles with, out of
You
curiosity?
know, I often wonder where that came, where my two passions, the Beatles and the New York Mets baseball. And
Yes,
I
yes.
don't know where my appreciation for both came from. It's fascinating to think that my earliest memories when it comes to music has always been something connected to the Beatles going back to when I was like 4 years old. Now I'm
Okay.
60 now, so we're talking 1969. And I think I had I'm almost positive the Hey Jude album
Yeah,
which
came
would have
out.
come out right before my fifth birthday,
Yeah, that's
That was
exactly
my
right.
first.
was the first album I owned. And I still have this image in my head of walking past a local record store in the Bronx where I was from, seeing it in the window and telling my parents, I want that. And so we're talking 5 years old. What
Okay.
was it? I don't know because my parents weren't big into music. They were
Hmm.
definitely not into the Beatles.
Well, yeah.
It was another world to them. I gravitated to music. I don't know what pulled me in.
Hmm.
It was the Beatles at the core, but I had other songs I liked, and I or was already uh, gathering a modest collection of 45s, even from 4 years old. Build Me
Wow.
Up Buttercup by the Foundations might have
Wow.
been the first record I ever owned.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good tune.
And what was it? I don't know. Was it I wonder if it had something to do with the visual of the record, a single on I had a little GE show and tell phonograph, and
Wow.
the Apple spinning around, I think may have played in somehow into at least for some reason visually pulling me in. Badfinger's Come and Get It single was another very
Oh,
early
yeah,
purchase.
yeah.
And my dad bringing home Abbey Road and Let It Be,
Your dad
which
did.
got played on his stereo. That was in his record collection, but he would put it on for me because he
Oh,
knew, you know.
that you like the Beatles, yeah.
So the passion was there somehow, some way from when I
Uh-huh.
was four.
Wow.
And it just, as the years went by and I got older, slowly, I learned more and realized, oh, they broke up. They're four now. It's four individuals. I
Mhm.
gravitated to Paul McCartney first.
Oh yeah, Paul. Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah.
And I mean, I had the Power to the People single from Lennon came out the
Yeah.
day before I turned 6. And
Wow.
I had my mom bought me the 45 and I
Yeah.
traumatized my parents with Yoko's B-side. Um, so it happened.
Yeah.
Why these things happen, I don't know.
Well, it could have been when you walked by the shop. There could have been something when you saw the visual cover of the Hey Jude album that attracted you to the actual album itself, because you didn't know that much about the Beatles then, right?
Right. No,
So it could
I
have,
don't know. I don't know. I knew enough, I think, that I knew what I was looking at, and I knew that was the Beatles.
you did know that, yeah.
I'm sure because
Yes.
I don't think again the picture I have in my head, it was in the store window, but it still was far enough away that
Huh.
I knew what I was looking at, that
Oh,
was the
I
Beatles.
see.
It's the
Yeah.
Beatles. My mom, she said, when parents have the baby books where they keep the hair from the first haircut and
Huh.
baby's first tooth, and she wrote in it, and this is in 1965 when I was an infant, favorite band. She didn't know what else to write. She wrote the Beatles, only because they were the biggest thing going in
Oh,
65,
sure. Oh, sure, sure.
and I
Yeah.
was months old when she did it, and it turned out to be like she
She
predicted.
planted she planted the seed.
Yeah,
You, you're
Yeah.
cracking me up with your story because my first album was the Hey Jude album also. Also,
Uh,
you said the show and tell. I had a show and tell.
yeah.
Yeah,
With
first.
you had the story, you had the
The little
stories and the
stick
film
thing, yeah, it
strip,
comes out.
right?
Yeah, I
And
use
that
that to play my music.
phonograph for my Three Dog Night singles and my Carpenter singles and my Apple records and yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I was confused when I was a little kid. I really believed when you listen to the radio that there was a band that was at that station, and then they kind of walk away and they set up the next song, and there's a band there playing.
that's funny. Yeah.
So it took me a while to figure out that there was actual records, and that's what they were
Yeah.
playing.
Right, right.
well, 69 was a hell of a year. I'm a lot older than both you cats. So I know what was going on because I got turned on to the Beatles in 64 when they first came here,
Right.
Darren. Yeah.
Mhm.
So at that point, I became completely obsessed and in love with the Beatles. So I
Mhm.
was tracking every single thing that they did, every interview that they did, every press conference that they did, every album that they released, every single that they released. Upon the first initial releases of all
Right.
that material in the States from early 64 right up until when they broke up officially in April of 1970.
Right.
So 69, when you were getting turned on, 69 was actually a rather tumultuous time for the Beatles, as you probably
Yeah,
know,
sure. Hmm.
because Paul was trying to get the Beatles back in the beginning of the year, which was a total disaster. That's when George quit and all that
Right.
stuff, brought Billy Preston in, and then they finally ended up releasing Let It Be after they released Abbey Road, even though Abbey Road was recorded
Right.
later than the Abbey Road, than the Let It Be stuff. So, and then at that point, Don had already was working with the Plastic Ono band,
Right.
So it was really tumultuous, but it was nice that at least that John and Paul got together to do the Ballad of John and Yoko,
Hmm.
which they called it a Beatles recording, but it's not the Beatles. It's just John and Paul because
Right.
there's no George or there's no Ringo. And then to put everything else on top of everything else on the sleeve, Yoko sitting in the sleeve under the moniker of the Beatles. And if you look at that sleeve, look at Paul McCartney's face. He's not very happy that.
Yep.
So
Yep.
anyhow, all this stuff was going on, and then of course at the end of '69, was when Abbey Road came out, and that blew everybody. It was like, oh my God, listen to this thing, and that, it was groundbreaking again because it was unlike any of their other albums, and they were the masters of not sitting on their laurels and doing something different all along the line, you
Right.
know, and doing sort of reinventing themselves,
Right.
not only musically but also visually. They went through
Sure.
certain marks through their career when they started to look different, the
Yeah.
whole Pepper period, with the costumes, the day glow jackets and all that stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So now I looked at your biography and I saw some names on there that you had interviewed, some people in the Beatle camp, specifically Ringo. Now,
Yeah.
I had Ringo on my show as a guest as well. And I met Ringo when I met John Lennon in 1971. I was a
Wow.
guest at John Lennon's birthday party. And so when I was interviewing Ringo, it was kind of a funny bit. I said, "Hey, Ringo, it's Brooke Halpin. We met at John's birthday party in 1971." And he goes, "Oh, I remember it so well," because he couldn't remember it at all. So it was he's a sweet guy and really nice
Yeah.
guy. And what's your takeaway with your interview with Mr. Ringo Starr?
Just what you said. I interviewed him when his solo album Ringo Rama came out in 2003, and we did the interview at the Carlisle Hotel in Manhattan,
Sure.
and they booked a suite, I guess, and it was an assembly line type of thing. This station was coming in, this newspaper was coming in, Darren from WFUV was in, then at 1 o'clock, blah blah. They probably Ringo was like getting, you know, this turn this
Oh,
uh
maybe or no?
all the interviewers one right after another. So I was able actually to break the ice with him
Oh,
because my daughter was around 4 at the time. She had just had major hip surgery
at
and was in a
4?
body cast.
Oh,
It
dear.
was really scary, a scary time.
Oh,
But she took a liking to Ringo, and she loved the Yellow Submarine movie, as
of
many
course.
kids do.
Yeah, yeah.
And she drew him a picture. So I brought it with me to the interview, and I tried to, as briefly as possible, because time was of the essence, explain what was going on. And my daughter was 4. She's home in a hospital bed. She's gonna be
Oh,
fine, but she's in a body cast. She drew this for you. So at the end of the interview, Ringo, who was beginning, I think, to start turning uh, autographs aside.
yes.
I had brought my copy of Goodnight Vienna, and I had the new album, Ringo Rama, and he signed Ringo Rama to Emily, and he
Oh,
signed my Goodnight Vienna. And then my engineer who came with me to run the equipment had his dad's White album, and he wouldn't sign it. I only signed it for the little girl,
oh,
and he took the picture. He
uh,
was very, very cognizant of his time. The interview, I had 20 minutes with him, and almost like he had a clock in his head. When that 20-minute mark came, he popped up, thanked us. Great interview, boys. I got to go shopping, and beeline out of the suite. And it was like, we're sitting there. I had the opportunity to wrap the interview, but when he was out the room, I was like, how do you know that was 20 minutes? I mean, it was amazing. It was his time now, and he was done. So,
yeah.
is it something that, the kind of thing that you look back and you go, did that really happen?
Uh,
You know what I mean? You got to think back. But it was a thrill. I had met him very briefly backstage a couple of years before that, but that was, with listeners of WFUV radio who won tickets, and somehow we had a promotion going, go backstage to meet Ringo. So
mhm.
I went as the station liaison. And it was very brief. It was a hello and a handshake, and
That's it.
and
Yeah.
and these are our listeners, and that was it. It was over right
Oh,
away. It was very cordial, and then There was a third meeting actually when a few years after Ringo Rama, my daughter's now 11 and she comes with me to see Ringo play on Long Island in Westbury. I know Ringo's publicist and she set it up so I could come backstage with my daughter.
Elizabeth?
Elizabeth Freund is
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
publicist, right? Yeah. So we went backstage and Emily got to meet him. And I don't know if Ringo remembered. I got the impression he might have been vaguely familiar with a guy who came to interview him and brought a picture that his daughter had drawn. And it would have been 6 years later, maybe 6 years earlier.
Hmm.
So we got a very nice picture they took of me and my daughter when she was young and Ringo. And that
Oh,
picture is now on the cover of a book that got published 2 years ago, I think. The author's name is Dana Klausner. And the book is called Beatlemania. It's about Beatle fans and their love of the Beatles and their experience with the music
oh,
and maybe
yeah.
meeting them. And she had a chapter for disc jockeys who met the Beatles, and she
Oh,
interviewed me.
oh, nice.
And I submitted the photo, and the publisher would be cute to put on the cover.
Oh, how nice.
So,
How nice, man.
if you look up Dana Klausner,
Yeah, I'm
Klosner,
I'm
her book's
familiar.
got,
I'm familiar with that, what she did with that book. Yeah,
so it's
that's
me and Emily and Ringo. So Ringo, very kind, very nice, very, very giving of the small window of time that he was allotted to give. He was very, very personal. And
yes.
I think if that was the show also, we were sitting in the front row and he was able to reach over and he took some popcorn out of my daughter's bucket, which was hysterical. He recognized us sitting there. He just reached over and he said, "Thank you," off mic to my daughter. And people were
Uh,
cracking up around us,
that's funny. I'm
and she's all starstruck. And I'm like, don't eat any more of the popcorn. Save it.
yeah, yeah.
No.
Okay, so let's go on. Now, Donnie Harrison and of course Julian Lennon and
Yeah.
James McCartney. Now, this is all very interesting to me because I know certainly a lot about Julian and I know some stuff about certainly about Donnie and also James McCartney because a friend of mine he produced James McCartney. You might know him, David Kahn. Do you know David at all?
I don't know him personally. I know who he is. Yes.
He's a pretty close friend of mine.
Right.
So when I go to New York, then he plays whatever he's working on. At one time, he was working with James McCartney, and he played me a song. I forget the name of it. And David was telling me that James was more talented than Paul. I said, "Oh, come on, man." I said, "How can that possibly be?" He said, and that's just his point of view. Anyhow, I know James, from what I understand, uh, when he would be on stage, he certainly doesn't or didn't have the exuberance and the showmanship
Yeah.
that his dad has.
Right.
There's something, I don't know what's going on with him. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about, again, what's your takeaway with your interview with James McCartney, Paul's son?
James was clearly very talented. I wouldn't go to the extent of saying that he's more talented than his dad, but he had released a couple of EPs and then did put a full length album out, and all the titles escape me now. But you definitely could hear that there was a definite talent in there. Now, I don't think James is cracked up for public life. I
Exactly.
don't know anything about his past.
Yeah.
I think there may have been a little baggage in the past, possibly, and this is totally my assumption. I think James had some personal issues and may have had
Yes.
an issue with the relationship with his dad. That's all ironed out now.
Hmm.
Um, but he clearly was not comfortable. I saw him play at a club in New York City right around the time when I interviewed him, and he didn't look comfortable on stage,
Right.
but at the
Right.
same time, he played his songs, he had his band, he did his thing,
Yeah.
people loved it. And then in the interview, he seemed very, very he would I don't know if uncomfortable was the right word, but he was not, he invited me to dinner that night, which I couldn't tell if he just was being overly social, and that's what you do when you meet somebody, or they must have had a busy schedule because whoever was with him, the guy from his record label at the time was like, "No, James, we can't, we're not going to dinner tonight." And here we got Bob, 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 and Bob coming
Oh,
up later. But he was very kind, very sweet, soft spoken, um, and there was talent there, and know if I don't know if he's just comfortable having the spotlight on him, but I think he likes taking a peek at what it's like.
yeah.
And you
Hmm.
know I wish he had put out another batch of songs over the past year or two. I wish he would put them out as a traditional album. I'm not a download guy. I'm a physical format guy, and I know that they were compiled together as something you could download. But he wasn't calling it an album. It was just a group of songs that he shared his latest batch of tunes. So he pops up lately on social media more than when I interviewed him, but um,
Did he
there was
say anything?
definitely a talent there. Whether or not the day comes when he's ready to,
Yeah,
you know,
I
let it
think
go, I don't know.
there could be some sort of a physical or mental ailment, perhaps, or something that's preventing him. Or maybe that's just the way he is. But did he say anything about his dad that kind of surprised you at all, or
You know
no?
what? I don't remember. I don't recall.
Don't
I may have been on eggshells with that one because not
Yeah.
sure where I should go.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
about the
if I
dad.
should mention, I'm sure I did mention his dad, but I don't recall
Uh-huh.
really. I think I kept it to keep the focus on him and
On
he'll
him.
open up, and it sort
Sure,
of worked, if I
sure.
remember.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue to Donnie because I've seen interviews with Donnie and people would be saying, "Oh, so what's it like, to be George Harrison's son?" And Donnie's like, "Hey, I'm here to talk about my album.
Yeah,
Hey, I'm here to talk about my music." And I'm like, "Whoa," so
yeah,
he's a man of his own, and he
right.
doesn't want to
Definitely.
talk. Yeah, so
Yeah.
did that the kind of thing happen when you interviewed Donnie?
Yeah. It's actually Danny is how he pronounces
Oh
it.
yeah, Donnie,
Right.
Danny.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
always thought it was Donnie as well, because with the
yeah.
H there, he came up initially with the band Fistful of Mercy. I hope that's right. It was Danny, it was Ben Harper and Joseph Arthur.
Yeah.
We played Joseph Arthur a lot on WFUV. Ben Harper, of course, was an established name, and Danny was part of the trio. They did one self-titled album, and I interviewed them at WFUV. Um, and the wild thing about that was when they were doing sound check, I couldn't see them through the glass where I was sitting. But when Danny would talk, it was terrifyingly scary how it sounded like George was in the studio.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah, yeah,
that's not his son, that's
yeah.
George.
Plus,
You know,
he looks so much
the
like him,
second
really.
time he came up, he was plugging, I think, his first solo album.
Uh-huh.
And we were able to have a little bit more of a one-on-one because it was just him. I was concentrating on his album. And when I did start talking about his dad, they had just released the box set that brought together the Ravi Shankar recordings that were on Dark Horse Records
Mhm.
that George produced. And Danny oversaw those albums. I think there were three of them brought together into the box set. Soon as I mentioned that project, Danny's eyes lit up,
Oh,
and
okay.
we talked at length. The interview became very long then,
Oh,
uh, about the project and other things that might be down the pike,
uh-huh.
regarding his dad's music. And then he opened up,
Oh,
and
he did.
at the time
Oh,
he said there was nothing really in the way of archival stuff,
huh.
which we have since seen that that's not necessarily the case. But he didn't have at that moment anything other than anything on the burner, or he wasn't revealing anything. Because I was asking him about, what kind of unreleased stuff might come, or what album might get re-released, or So he was great. He's a fascinating artist too. He's not for everyone, his music, but
Right.
I really enjoy it, and he's got a boatload of talent, Danny. And I would have loved to have seen him when he opened for the Electric Light Orchestra a few years ago, but didn't get the chance to. And hopefully, I get to meet him again and interview him again at some point.
So then he was, unlike what I said, he was open to talk about his George,
Not
evidently,
until it happened. He opened up,
after
and
you brought up the
I just
subject of
happened to
the,
mention that
yeah,
box set had just come out.
and then he
and
opened up.
and that was like what before that he was open and very cordial and very talkative about his music. I
Yes,
didn't go. I kind of stayed away, and towards the end of the interview brought up the box set, and
I see.
I could tell that another door opened.
Yeah,
He was like, oh, this guy
that's
knows
great.
his stuff. He's not just asking me what was dad like. He's talking about this box set that he produced
Yes.
of his dad's work with Ravi Shankar.
Oh, that's great. That's absolutely great. Now with Julian, that's a whole other situation, and we know about Julian's past and his childhood and the whole thing, with Cynthia and then Yoko, et cetera, et cetera, and then Hey Jules became Hey Jude. We know all that
Yeah, yeah.
history. And I remember when he released Volat,
Hmm.
it must have been 85, I want to say, or around 85.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and that whole album blew me away. I thought, oh my God. And it was produced by someone who I worked with years ago in New York, and that was Phil Ramone.
Right.
I had a recording contract with Phil for 5 years at
Wow.
A&R. And so when I heard that album, I thought it was every track. I'm going, oh my God, every track is just brilliant. And then
Yeah,
the critics came out and they destroyed it. They crucified this kid, and they said, "Oh, he sounds too much like his father." Hello,
yeah.
what do you expect? You expect him to sound like who? Elvis Presley,
Right.
or
It was ridiculous.
yeah, a
And he
Sony,
and he,
Sony for, it was absolutely ridiculous, and it really pissed me off when that happened. But that, to me, to this very day, Volat, that whole album is one of my favorite LPs. So, what happened with Julian? Did you get any new insights
I
about
had
him?
it was almost like I interviewed two different people.
Oh,
At WFUV when Velat came out, I still remember the day a bunch of us we got the 12-inch single, advanced single from Atlantic Records, and we ran in the studio and the title track was the single, and we were like our jaws, like our mouths were open because it sounded so much like his father. And this was a really good song. And
oh
there
yeah,
was a maturity about him throughout that whole album.
yes,
That was pretty remarkable for I coming with John Lennon's son, the first of the Beatle kids,
yes,
is now all of a sudden boom. And
yeah.
he had this, and I agree totally what you said. Velat was such a mature work too, a great '80s pop album that was not like sugar coated, was not novelty stuff. I mean, it was legitimately good songs in there.
Hey, we're at the
And
Tom, Tom is
we're
waving at us.
yeah,
Tom?
we're at less than a minute. It's gonna shut
Oh,
down.
so we're going to use the second link.
The second link?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do we cut off here and go to
yeah,
our dial in on the the other?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, okay,
To be
great guys.
continued.